Hello there, welcome Genismals and welcome to episode 8 of the Phantom build. Now in episode 8 we will be bringing all of our fuselage half together, which is getting this cockpit finally in, making sure it's all in nicely, ready to start doing some filling, sanding, all that kind of stuff. But while we wait for that to dry, we will be sort of tackling these air intakes, right? Our air intakes are, shall we say, they need a little bit of attention, right? We've got ejector pin marks inside here. We need to sort of fill this out, and I'll show you how to sort of scratch weld that up to fill it out, because it is a bit sightly when this piece is up against here and you can sort of just see in there, and it just shows you this kind of horrible little gap. We want to get all nicely filled in, nice and smooth, so it looks good. If you just so happen to look down the side of those air intakes, as well as a couple of other things. So let's just get down and get building. So we want to start now gluing our cockpit in. Now I'm going to be using a couple of glues here, right? I'm going to start off with a nice bit of super glue. I always put it on just empty pot lid, cocktail stick to apply it. But before we do that, we just want to make sure that this resin is lining up nicely, right? Because inside of here, we don't want it sort of gluing it in place and then finding out, well, it wasn't the best of fits and it's kind of a bit funny on the opposite side. Because when it comes to putting bits together, we're going to glue one side, but then we've got to bring this in, and it's a little bit hard to glue the opposite side. So we just want to make sure. So it's basically, getting that test fitting going, and just holding this nicely, and just checking that underneath here we haven't got any sort of movement, right? So I'm just trying to wiggle it and see if there's any sort of movement if we glued that into place, and it's trying to get it to lock in and it doesn't seem to be moving, which means after test fitting that, it means I can glue this to one side and it should not be out of place on the opposite side of the fuselage, right? So this is going to be a simple case. Let's get a cocktail stick. We'll just put a little bit in one corner. We don't need loads, we just need this to sort of glue slightly in place. And we've got to be careful with super glue, because with super glue, it doesn't sort of dissolve and melt the plastic. It kind of just sort of bonds it, right? And because of that, you can possibly be in a situation where the super glue oozes out and makes blobs, and we don't want blobs everywhere. So that little bit of gluing has now locked that into place, but we want to test fit again. This is the thing with light resin, it does not hurt to take the time and just make sure that everything is lining up nicely and fitting nicely. Right, so that is in place, and that's how it is going to look in there, and that looks all good just there. Now the beauty of this is we can now go off and glue this in places that we're not going to see. So I can nicely come into this corner here, and probably build up a bit of a blob here to really make sure that this locks into place, and then that's not going to be a part that's seen or getting in the way, as well as we can put a nice bit in here as well. So that's going to lock that in place. All right, now I'll put this one in first because it allows us to sort of have access to glue it in the right way. Then we kind of want to come in and do the same with our cockpit area. Now with this, I am kind of thinking it wouldn't be so bad to get some pegs out. Right, good old nick some pegs off the wife. Right, these ones are good because I've got a bit of rubbers on there, so we hopefully won't be damaging any of our resin. Alright, I want to just sort of hold that into place, and then sort of hopefully sort of be able to maneuver it. Right, I want it butted right up the back there. Right, get it maneuvered in, and then again we can just put like a little bit of super glue in certain areas that just sort of holds it just nicely and steadily. We'll come along with another glue later just to make sure it's locked in, but it's kind of just getting it perfectly placed, little bits of super glue, taking your time, you know, and coming back and sort of, you know, as you, before you've even doing any gluing, you know, again sort of test fit it, right, and I'll come back when we put the other half on. So I've got this nicely sort of semi-dry fitted here, and what I'm basically doing is I know that if I put a peg here, that's going to close that gap up and so forth, right? And I've basically got it fitting with as little gappage as possible. I don't know if you remember, there was quite a bit sort of gappage there, but by, you know, using those pegs, we've closed that gap, right? Yeah, we've got some gappage here, right? We'll sort them out later, and I've just sort of got it so as we know how it's going to sort of fit, as well as even get out these canopies. You know, it is kind of crucial that you just make sure that everything's going to fit up. A nice little bit of a dry fit, right? I've already done this off camera, so I'm not going to sort of try and fiddle around and get it sort of all in place and take time doing it, but you know, you're just looking to make sure we've not got any major sort of problems with it. If you do bear in mind that if you're going to have your canopies open, that's going to give you a bit of leeway anyway, so maybe not worry about it too much. But it is, you know, it is one of these things, this is just something, you know, it really does pay off to really test fit, right? So I'm spending a bit of time showing you that. Now that's in place, right, I don't really like to use super glue. Super glue is just too sort of instant glued into place, right? So I don't want to be sort of piling a load of super glue up here and trying to just kind of get it into place, because I know I'm going to be sort of maneuvering a bit. I'm going to be getting those pegs into place, probably won't have time, it's going to glue solid into place. Okay, this side, right, because we've got time to play. So this is where, yes, I'm going to be using micro crystal clear. It is going to take a bit of time to glue and set and go off and whatnot, but it's going to give you the time to play around with it, get it in the right position, and once you got in the right position, the pegs are nicely holding it, you can relax and just let it dry then. So I'm going to be placing this in a couple of places. So first off, I'm just going to get an old paintbrush so I can just dip this in. I'm going to get a nice big blob and I'm going to ooze it just underneath here, right, so as our glue can nicely get between our cockpit and our sort of wheel well just here, right, just a nice bit in there. Again, doesn't have to look pretty, we're not going to see this bit. Then I'm going to sort of, you know, quite nicely sort of plaster a fair bit where we want it to glue, right? Doesn't look pretty, but it doesn't have to look pretty, right? And this should sort of spread out as well when we sort of bring it all together, right? I'm even going to maybe sort of put a little bit around here, right? We don't have to worry so much about this oozing out, because it's like a PVA glue. It's easy to sort of clean up where you don't want it to be. But if we can get a bit of glue in there, it should hopefully cover all our bases and lock this into place. Right, so I'm just going to clean that up later. Right, so now we've got time to bring this all nicely together. We can now start to bring it together. Ooh, got a bit on my hand there, wipe that off. Right then, so let's bring it together. I should have probably got a bit of masking tape to hand, because that's going to help in a bit. There we go, so a nice bit of masking tape, always a good one, which I should have got out and sort of rip some off first, because I need to now put this down. But there we go. There we go, let's get a bit one side. Right, there we go. This might take a bit of time, sorry, but you know, you just want to make sure. Alright, so we're getting it all lined up, just how we've already dry fitted it and lined it up and got it all perfect. You want to pretty much sort of line up in the same way and just start to put things on here that brings it all together. Now we've got this gappage we know we're going to have here, Right, so we want to get a peg on there, but we want to get it on so as it does get that sorted, and that's looking good. Probably a bit of a peg just there as well. Always checking as we go along. Bit more masking tape, maybe just for the front area, just here, just to lock that in. Might need another peg because my hands are a bit sweaty. Right, and we hold that in there like so. Check the underside. If you have got some oozing out glue of the PVA, because we did lavish it in there, which as you can see it is oozing out, so nice and easy. Nice bit of a cotton wool bud, maybe a bit moist, and we can just clean that up so easily. Right, so don't worry about putting too much in there, as long as it's going, you know, all nicely inside, a little bit of oozed out, probably a good sign to show that you're sort of getting it everywhere. And then you can just clean up all these little bit of oozed out bits, right? And it's just kind of like checking that's nicely in position, that's looking all nicely in position, and then we just want to leave it nicely to dry, and then we can worry about sort of doing all the gluing around here and around there. We'll worry about that once this nice PVA glue, or so we say my crystal clear, has nicely gone off. With that now nicely dried into place, it's locking it into place enough for us. Now it's just basically we simply sort of glue this. Now the masking tape, you know, you can use it to sort of hold it into place, but I do find that you come in with the Tamiya's thin cement, you get too close to masking tape and it can sort of seep and sort of have that capillary reaction to get in on the masking tape, and it can leave nasty marks. So I really tend not to like to use that kind of stuff. There are these F clamps. I know E models used to do them and they were fantastic, but they decided to sort of give it up. And you know, these are sort of really hard to find, but if you can find something similar or something like this, they are really good for locking these into place. You know, let's remove these bits of masking tape. Right, even a good peg just here. Right, although that's not quite locking that in, there is a bit of gappage as you can see there, so maybe an F clamp to sort of lock that in a little bit better. And this is what this is kind of all about. It's all about just, you know, getting that nice amount of pressure. You know what, we might need that little bit more, maybe a peg with an F clamp actually on the peg as well. Right, it's all about getting that right pressure. Because we've got resin here, it is sort of leaving a gap as you can see, so something for us to take care of. But I do want it to pinch right there, right, because we've got to put a nose cone on there. And we don't want to sort of have the nose cone not line up right. So as long as we're pinching pretty, you know, nice and gap free right at that point there, a bit of filling there shouldn't be such a big deal. But again, you know, test fit with this resin stuff, test for everything, get your canopy out, make sure that gap isn't going to create a problem, which it doesn't look like it is. And we just need to go all the way around and do that, as well as before you even start gluing, make sure where you've clamped it and everything, just feel for those steps. Right, you get a step, you're going to have to sort it out. So I'm feeling for a step, and then I'm quite happy now to sort of come in and we can start applying this glue, right, in all these locations. And it's just working your way all the way around, making sure everything's clamped in, clamped down, nicely dry fitted, no sort of steps, no nothing. Go along with the Tamiya's thin cement, got that nice capillary reaction to get it all really nicely glued, nice and hopefully seamless, hopefully no gaps, and that should have that finally locked in. So while our fuselage section nicely dries, we're going to mess about with the air intakes, because with this kit there is a bit of an issue with it. I mean, it is a little bit old, you know, it does fit quite well, but you know, we do have a bit of a problem with the air intakes. First off, we have some ejector pin marks inside here. You look down an air intake, it's all nice, smooth and white and clean. We don't want these ejector pin marks showing. Also, if we just dry fit this together quickly and temporarily, there we go, just get that on there, nicely dry fitted. What will happen is here, if we now bring this together where it's supposed to, you will see that nasty bit of stuff going on there, just down in there, right? We're actually seeing all this nasty stuff, this big sort of hollow space, right? We don't want that. You can just see it as well, just on the underside, so we want to take care of that. We want to get it sort of filled in and looking nice. So those two little issues. So first off, for this one, a nice bit of plastic card, right? Always good to have a bunch of this stuff around, different thicknesses and sizes, right? Always good for any sort of scratch building. Where's my scissors gone? I've got these nice good scissors here by Tamiya. These are rather good ones for cutting this kind of stuff. Just cut a general piece off. Right, now depends, you know, what thickness you use is kind of up to you. I'm using 0.5 mil, right? And I do find that if I cut, you know, this into about 3 levels of it, right, if I just cut 3 off, right, it makes it just the right height. If I now sort of place this in here, it makes it the right height that this 0.5 mil, 3 of them plus our top one, literally kind of makes that nice and perfect level, nice perfect height. Depending on what thickness you use, you might only need 2, you might need 4, you know, just kind of go with whatever you sort of need, right? And then all we're going to do is just start creating our shape. So a bit of a red pen. Now this doesn't have to be perfect and gap free. All we need to do is get a pretty sort of general sort of shape. So I'm just taking my red pen here, sort of eyeballing it, marking around about where I need to cut, and then I am going to just do a general sort of cut. Right, again, a bit of gappage will not hurt. Use all these cut-offs to build up your layers, right? And then, as you can see, you know, we need to cut a little bit more, right? So again, we're just going to cut through that. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut straight down the middle, right? Because really, I only really want to sort of do half and half. We don't really see the middle, right? And it just makes it easy because these locators, right, we don't want to get rid of them, we want to keep them. So we want to keep them in place. So let's cut a little bit more across here, so our little locating pegs there are all fine. And as you can see, if I just sort of cut this a little bit deeper, don't matter if I've got a bit of a gap, but there you go, that is almost there. I mean, just a little pinch, right, just a bit of a pinch there, and that should look like it's going to fit. As you can see, it doesn't have to be anything special. We can go off, get these that we cut out earlier, right, get our Tamiya extra thin cement. So this should give us our height now, right, and then that should hopefully sit on there. Now I'm just feeling that actually it feels like I could do with another one of these, just to bring the height up some more. Bit of Tamiya thin cement should do it. Again, it's just kind of like just quick testing, right? But remember, this doesn't have to be mega neat. So then that's feeling pretty sort of nice and flush with that. I mean, feeling it, it feels like actually it could do one more. I mean, I did use 3 on the last one, but hey ho. So I'll cut another one. Best that better to be higher than it to be sinking in. Right, because this is the thing, I mean, we can sand at this later and we can sand it down to the absolute perfect level. But if it's sunk, right, if it's kind of lower, then we're going to have to fill it, right? So best that is, yeah, okay, it's a little bit high, we've got a bit of sand in there, but that should be fine, right? And then I could probably just cut that maybe about there, and that should be all good. Probably put, say, some more at the back there just to stop that sort of flapping down. Glue it into place, and then plain and simply we'll fill it. So there you go, almost done there. The filler we're going to use is the Mr. Hobby, Mr. White Putty. This putty, I mean, I don't mind it, to be honest with you. It's brilliant for sanding, absolutely brilliant. I mean, it just kind of just sands to a really nice white dust, really sort of easy to sand. Bit of a pain to sort of apply, it's a bit sort of sticky to start with. You know, you could put this on some sort of, I don't know, plate or something and sort of scoop it on, but I just kind of just blob some blobs on. Alright, it's no big deal. You know, this is going to be sanded to a nice smooth finish, and then we can just, you know, just using a spatula, we can just spread this into all the gaps. Right, this is why we don't have to worry about gaps when making this. Right, because we're just going to fill it in, sand it away. Once I've got the gaps filled, I kind of like scrape up all the big bits, so we ain't got to do loads of sanding, although this really does sand really nice, this stuff does. Right, and you know, pretty much there we go. Just let's leave it now to dry. So sadly we've come to the end of this episode, but in episode 9 we will finish off tackling these horrible sort of bit of problems that we've got here with the air intakes, getting those all filled, sanded. There's then going to be a bunch of scribing as well, because we want to get these air intakes to fit on here, but just because of the way they are, you know, we've got this sort of join line that comes across here, and we don't want it to look like a join line. We're going to try and make it look like a recessed panel line, so it looks as if we haven't glued a piece on here. It just looks like a recessed panel line, which is what we're sort of after there. And hopefully we'll have some sort of time to, you know, start tackling the fill-in areas of here, sanding it. There's definitely going to be a whole bunch of you know, filling, sanding and scribing to sort of tackle sort of all the way around here, because it is a bit of an old kit, so there is a bit of to tackle there. So we'll see you in episode 9 of the Phantom build, but until next time, my name is Bobby Waldron, this is Genesis Models, and I hope you've enjoyed.